Everton have a new manager. It's very exciting. Sean Dyche. Can you feel the excitement coming through? Because yes, we all know what Sean Dyche does, don't we? It's a 4-4-2. Very boring. He's got two big hoofers up top and they just launch the ball all the time to that and they defend their way, like scrap their way to a horrible 0-0, 1-0 wins, and that's what they do. It'll be rubbish. But what have I told you that Sean Dyche isn't what you think he is? He's far more, and he may actually be a really good coach, manager for Everton, because he does exactly what they need. Because what they need is someone who can help them learn to defend first. That's one thing he does, right? But there's a lot more, and I'll show you what that is as well. Now, we know they need to learn how to defend because they can't do it. They've conceded 28 goals, which is all right. That puts them sort of in the middle of the table for goals conceded, but it comes from an XG, which puts them second worst, XG against. So like your expected goals against, they are the second worst team in the Premier League. And there's loads of reasons for it. First of all, the squad's not amazing, right? So that's one thing to think about. The system that Lampard has kind of settled on, he switched between a 4-1-4-1 and a 5-4-1, is it's mostly this 5-4-1. And what ends up happening is you have this back three, the wing backs get pinned by the opposition wingers, they get pinned back like this. You've got two midfielders then covering basically all this space because Iwobi might come back, Gray might come back, Calvert-Lewin has to stay up top if he's not injured. But what they tended to do is they attack with only Gray, Calvert-Lewin and Iwobi like this. And when they get the ball, they're often just surrounded by opponents, and then they lose the ball, they get a pass inside and they steal it and then possession turns over. Because these three can't really do anything if a ball is played long. There's not enough of them there to win the second ball and move up the pitch, so they're just kind of stuck constantly back in this sort of bit of the pitch. And Iwobi and Gray are not great defenders. They come back now and again, do the work. So what mostly happens with Everton is they try and attack in a 3-4-3, but mostly it's a defence and three, and then they get pinned back by opposition players. The fullback can push up, so the winger pushes in here, pushes the wing back, then he can go inside to be next to one of the centre backs. The fullback can then push up to keep him pinned in. Midfielders can push up, they keep them absolutely pinned, and then they just can't do anything. Then they concede, and then they're even worse in transition after they conceded. There's a great article in The Athletic by Ahmed Walid looking at specifically this and how Everton then just start pushing forward. So while they were really close and compact before, they're still, what they were doing when the opposition had the ball near their half or near their box, whatever, they'd just be pulled out of position. So they might put the ball wide and something they'll go and everyone will go to try and get it, but they leave big open spaces and then they just can't cover the spaces. They're too eager to win the ball back in a non-disciplined, tactically organised way. And the shape is really important when you're trying to defend. Like, you can have players who just try and travel with everyone man-to-man marking, but if you go man-to-man, you can leave big spaces for other people to go into, and they're conceding passes that are going through lines, like players will just too easily pass through by defenders being taken out of position and someone running through. It's happened all season long, it's dreadful, and it's something that Lampard had problems with at Chelsea as well in his defensive structure, was that players were taken out of position or they just weren't there, they're chaotic, trying to win the ball back with some sort of chaos energy, and it's easily taken apart. And so that's the big problem that Everton have had, is that trying to play in that 5-4-1 and then not being able to get out of their own half, nor they can't create, they don't score any goals, they don't create any goals, they're really low down the table for that as well. And then they concede too many, open up in transition to try and get back into the game and concede more on the break. Because when they go forward, they then push more players forward. Gray, Iwobi goes forward, Coleman might push up, you can't expect him to get up and down the wing. Nathan Patterson's all right, but he pushed Mikalenko up. And as they try and chase, they leave big space between the centre backs and the midfield when they might push forward, Onana maybe, and they just leave too much open space for the opposition to counter-attack them, and they concede goals. West Ham scored 2 goals in the break. It's just easy to score against Everton. They're easy to beat. Now, Sean Dyche's teams are not easy to beat. Well, he's only had one team really. He was Watford manager for a little bit of time. Then he went to Burnley for about 20 years, which is where we know him, right? So yes, he plays a 4-4-2 block. There's a great video, The Coach's Voice, excellent channel, you should follow them as well, and where he does a masterclass showing why he plays a 4-4-2. There's an easy reason why he uses this, right? So 4-4-2 sounds quite archaic, but there's real functionality to it. And people like Arrigo Sacchi get a tune out of it. And that's how AC Milan were so good back in the day. Pep Guardiola played a version of a 4-4-2 last season. But what you get is when teams attack you. So sure enough, the whole point of the 4-4-2, when you sit deep in this block, is that you show the ball wide, kind of has to go wide because there's no space to get the ball through these positions. Everyone's blocking the balls through here, so the opponent has to go wide. And when you have big players, big fridge freezers at the back to head the ball away, that makes it very difficult to score from crosses. And there's other bits set up in here to get the ball out of their own half and attack. So 4-4-2, what happens? The ball goes wide, a winger can go 1v1 with this fullback. The fullback can then push up 1v1 with the wide midfielder, so you've got 2 banks of 4 that help you defend and maintain your block, your defensive structure. Players don't just charge out the position, they make sure that these lines are always kept clear. so that there's positions covered and there's no room for people to move into. Striker goes to the middle, obviously. Midfield might push up. Then what you'll find is that the strikers push up a little bit further, like here, to stay close to the centre backs. And this is what my team might look like when they push up on Burnley back in the day when Dyche was in charge, right? That's kind of what they do. The ball goes wide here. So say the ball's wide, 2v2, you might have an advantage. So what happens then is a midfielder comes over, blocks it. That's 3v2 in this situation here. So Burnley have an advantage in this situation. Then what inevitably happens is I'll squish the pitch a bit like this. One of the strikers will actually come back in to become more like a 4-4-1-1 to help block this pivot player. The number 6 is usually a pivot player if you're playing against a 4-3-3. So then you've got an overload here. The ball has to go back. This try might drop in here to offer a pass. The ball goes here. Then they shift the ball over to their side because the 4-4-2 blocks it, and Burnley were really good at working hard, tactically disciplined, and suddenly they just all shift over to this side of the pitch. So now what happens is the ball goes to this side, you've got a full back, wing back, midfielder might drop in. So the left back goes out, the centre back goes out, centre back goes out, right back comes in, maintaining this line always, so they're super organised. Then you've got the other players who help fill in the gaps, making sure that they've got this sort of shape. And then because you've got specific kind of players up top, like the two big lads, right? So it's what Burnley can afford, that's what they can get. The high level technical players cost heaps. Burnley didn't have it. So Sean Dyche got players who were functional and could do what they wanted to. Because obviously you're defending deep here, it's not ideal. When you do win the ball, you want to get it out. And the space often in these sorts of situations are going to be behind the fullback. So if you can get the ball to here, you want players to come up here. And if you've got a big hoofer, they tend not to be very quick. So you get the ball into them, they shield the ball with the goal because they're big and massive, they can shield it. You might push out for a throw-in, and then you can go again and squeeze up. And then they'll push up a lot. And this is kind of what we associate with Burnley, this sort of deep block. But then what Burnley do is push high and squeeze them high up the pitch. And they press high as well. Because the thing is, right, you think about pressing being like the thing Liverpool used to do very well. Now Liverpool press to try and create chances. So when a team's building out from the back, they'll open up. Another reason the 4-4-2 works so well is because of the options it gives you in this sort of bit of the pitch as well. Now, opposition build up. So when they're building up here, you've got two strikers. Now the reason for that is you can show the ball wide. The ball has to go wide if you're here because you can just block off this pivot player. So one player will either stand this side of the pivot player or go this side of the pivot player, depending who they're playing against. He's tight, can't get the ball to him anyway. Then you got one striker will lead the press to one side, and then they'll get tight and make sure that maybe this player here will stand between the 8 and the fullback, so we can go either way. He can push out or go back this way and keep that nice and tight. So when the ball is, that's a difficult ball to make because they want to encourage the opposition to clear the ball long. And Burnley's press back in the day was to encourage the opposition to play the ball long. It's risky, pushing high up like this. Why one player will sit deep, will play a high line like this. One player will sit deep and maybe on the striker like this or just behind him. Midfielders will lock on. Make sure they got this side of the pitch here. So this striker, if this striker leads the ball to this side of the goalkeeper, that's his job as a press, the ball has to go this way, then they'll squeeze up to try and make the pitch nice and narrow, try and basically split the pitch in half. So that if you imagine the pitch is in two, they'll try and make it like that because it forces the opposition to get all nice and tight. Then they can lead the ball where they want it to go. The opposition will clear the ball. It'll get knocked into an area where they've got big lads who push up and win the ball back. I can show you exactly what I mean and why they do it. So we go and look at some screen grabs of Burnley not sitting deep, not just being a hoofball team against Liverpool when Liverpool were really, really good back in the day. Here you go, right? So they're playing Fabinho at left back, so left centre back in this game, right? Now Burnley pushing up high. You see the two strikers, two forwards, big guys pushing up here, and Fabinho shapes up to knock a ball to the other side of the pitch. It's very obvious he's going to make this pass. So what happens is that as Chris Wood, who's the striker here, pushes up around him, he waits for the ball, that's going to get launched. The team then shifts over to that side immediately to make this pitch really small in half. And then there, they've got big lads, left back pushes up, wins that ball. Then Burnley squeeze to try and win the second ball, so they're not as close to their goal as they want to be. Look, they're keeping a highish line here, even though they're playing against lots of fast players, trying to squeeze the pitch. Now, Burnley have the advantage for like first balls and second balls because they're all big lads, aggressive, they want to get stuck in. The ball knocks forward, and then they can try and win it here. So how about when they want to build from the back? So you think Burnley, long balls. Well, actually, they do a lot of clever play from the back, and they do it on purpose. Everything's tactical, everything's for a reason. So they don't just play from the back for no reason to try and keep the ball because that's what you're meant to do. Against Liverpool, they want to encourage Liverpool to push up. Liverpool knew that they had a disadvantage in the first ball and the second ball because they don't have as big lads as Burnley. So by encouraging Liverpool to push out, they create space. Liverpool players push up, the ball goes wide, and then where's the the space going to be for Burnley to get the ball forward is going to be wide. So one of the strikers pushes out to the wide area, they squish the pitch so they can win the second ball, and you've got a big guy against a big guy, and it's kind of a more 50-50. That puts the odds, ironically, more in Burnley's favour, because Liverpool are better on the ball. Burnley squeeze them, and then they try and push the defensive line a bit higher. The midfield's aggressive, they keep the shape always. No one just like runs. If this was Everton under Lampard, this guy would push out and run somewhere. This guy would be somewhere else. They'd be easy to spread it through. And then Burnley can try and win the ball back. If they do get past them, the shape is obvious. They get back into a really coherent, tactically disciplined shape, and that's what they do. And that's how they stop teams scoring against them. And we know that's what Sean Dyche does. Like the cliche is the 4-4-2. Sure enough, he does it. Here we go. It's his formations he's played at Burnley. But we look at this, right? This is the last season that Dyche was in charge of Burnley. Now, attack speed is very high and long pass share is very high. So yes, they are getting the ball forward quickly and long, but they've got big lads up top who can do it. So that's why they can do that, and that's why it works for them at the moment. Now, if we look at what Everton were doing that season, it was Rafa Benitez at the start, and then it was Frank Lampard, I think about January, February, something like that came in. Not too dissimilar, put them side by side. That is Burnley. That is Everton, quite similar in how they're wanting to play the game. That's what they're doing under Benitez, then Lampard. Look at this season, it's awful. It makes no sense. So they have a long pass, a really high long pass here, lots of long balls, but they don't have players in position to squeeze the pitch and win the second ball, so they're just losing it. There's no speed in their attack. They're both slow and passive, and they're launching it. That doesn't make any sense. There's absolutely nothing here that shows any sign of progression or a style of play. It's just try and pass the ball out because that's what you're meant to do in football. And then launch it instead because you're getting squeezed by the opposition, and then they don't have players who can keep it. That is a big problem that you've got. And this is the thing, like that Burnley team that Sean Dyche had, I saw them play against some good teams like Arsenal. I think I saw them playing against Chelsea once as well. Often what you'll see is a much more attacking team than you really thought they were. It's a fast direct speed, you can see that from the numbers, but you'd often get, when they're trying to build from the back, they might launch it, but then they win the second ball, and immediately they squeeze it as high as they can. I've seen times when they've had a back three like this, with one of the fullbacks either side, ball side fullback will push up, maybe we'll put the right back up here, keep a line like this, really high on the halfway line, if it makes sense against a team who might not have the pace to get in behind. So everything changes depending on the opponent. They're really tactically clever, a lot more expansive than you think. You might have a winger who comes inside the pitch to shoot from here. Dwight McNeil might do that, maybe play on the left. And how does this apply to Everton though, right? So we know that Burnley played in a certain way because of the players they had. Some of them were okay technically, most of them were big, strong, hard workers, aggressive, all the things you associate with Sean Dyche's team. But if you had different players, what might he do? And how might this apply to Everton? What are you going to get? Now, the first thing you need to do is stop letting chances get created and teams playing through them and being caught in transition. Now, Dyche hasn't played a back three. The squad kind of suits it, because if we put them into a 4-4-2, what really makes sense here is we probably have Tarkowski, who played under Dyche at Burnley. Then the left centre-back could be Mina. Judging by what Dyche has done in the past and the kinds of players he's kept in, it's probably going to be ex-Burnley Michael Keane or Connor Cody. But let's put, just for fun, let's put Michael Keane in to build a Burnley team. We start to see a bit of the problem we've got, right? So you've got Pickford, Keane, Tarkowski. Pickford can kick the ball long, that's useful, they'll use that. They'll try and bring teams out and kick it long with Pickford, which is kind of what Lampard was doing actually. You get this here, then you get your left back will stay. Coleman might play, might be Patterson, more likely Coleman because it's the kind of character that Sean Dyche will like. Then you've got a choice of midfielders, so Onana and Gay might be the two players, but these both haven't been very impressive this season. Onana may be the better, Gay is full of errors. Then you've got Calvert-Lewin if he's fit. This is the only player they have who they can play the long passes into the channels to hold it up. Mope is not that player, he's a small nippy number 9. Not going to be able to do it. You could play Godfrey up front. There's the thing, it depends. We were filming this before transfer deadline days ended. Good chance they sign a striker to go there. That's why they've done it if they do sign someone big. Because then you've got maybe Demarai Gray can play there, Iwobi there. And this is your 4-4-2, Calvert-Lewin and someone else. Who's going to go there? You could play Gray up top, and then you probably play McNeil on the left, where you used to play for Burnley. And that's most likely your team if you have a 4-4-2. It's not ideal. This is not a good starting 11. If they can learn the tactical discipline needed to play the system the way that Sean Dyche wants to play, and to honestly to find out more about that, watch that coach's voice video, it's fantastic. That's probably what you're going to see from Sean Dyche. But then they'll evolve, because Everton will have at some point more money than Burnley did, and will be able to expand and build on this sort of team. And then we'll see Dyche adapt to that. He changed the way he played over time at Burnley. They signed players like Maxwell Cornet. He just liked to have a certain kind of character in his team to be able to play the way he wanted to. The exact sort of thing that Everton are missing. Now, sure enough, right, you look at Everton, they were really wanted Marcelo Bielsa, which is a different kind of thing. It's like getting a really fancy bottle of wine when you got Sean Dyche, who is a pint, a pint of delicious lager, right? So you've got those two things, very separate. They both do similar things, but in very different ways. So they've chosen the pint, and this is what they've got. It might work out very well. The big problem they've got is that, like, the money thing, like building in better players, how do they actually improve? Now, Dyche has proven over time that he can work on a tiny budget. He did it at Burnley. I've worked this out on Transfer Market. His Transfer Market's numbers in euros, the millions that he's brought in. Now, when he's spent big, it's because he's then sold big. He's sold at key players, brought in someone else for really cheap. You see their Championship, Premier League, Championship, Premier League, Premier League, they got fired. A total of 225 million euros, out 140 million euros. Then I converted it into pounds, which means the net spend is 74.5 million pounds net spend over however many years he's been there. Loads, right? So he's brought in not amazing players, but some of them have ended up at Everton, like now where he is, for big money. So he knows how to develop players and make them really decent. I had a good long chat with him on the phone once about Ashley Barnes and how he developed into a great player over time. He says he puts the conditions in place, but it's down to the players to really push themselves to get to that level. So that's nice. But the real problem is when you have players who you rely on, like Idrissa Gueye here, who are making the kinds of mistakes that are allowing Everton to concede goals. They lost this, I think it was like 4-1 or 4-0, something like that to Brighton. But look at this sort of thing, you can't rely on this. This is an experienced player running back, he passes back with just absolutely no idea what's going on, passes it straight to a Brighton player who runs through and goal and scores. I think it's Solly March scores the fourth. Here against Man United, Idrissa Gueye again, just simple errors, right? You've got Alex Iwobi, not a good defender. He plays in the middle of the park sometimes, but players can always go past him. He puts in the effort, but just doesn't have the bite in him to be able to win the ball back. Idrissa Gueye gets a short pass back from Iwobi. So Everton have won the ball, for context, have won the ball, they've pushed out, they're about to be hit in transition, the thing that always happens to them against Man United. They're 1-0 up, 40 minutes in, they lose concentration. Ball's played to Idrissa Gueye, simple control, it's gone. Passes the ball forward, Man United get in behind, and then there's a simple pass because they're in transition, they're not in the shape they want to be, there's too much space, there's always depth between players, there's always massive space between players, and they get hit. Whereas what I think you do under Sean Dyche is even if they're 1-0 down against Man United after 10 minutes, what they'll do is keep the plan, stick to it, stay in that shape, wait, grind it out, grind them down, and get to the last part of the game where they can try and push, and then you can try and win it. It's like more game management. Lampard wants to do things in a different way, didn't work, left them too open, they weren't good. Under Dyche, maybe they'll be very good. And so, Dyche does not do things exactly the way you think he does. He might be a very good Everton manager, he's not Bielsa, but Everton lack character, grit, determination, tactical discipline, and defensive nous. That's what they need. That's exactly what Sean Dyche does. But when he has the players and it suits his team, he can push them up higher and turn them into a nice looking possession team. It could happen. It might happen. And if it does, come back and say, you told me so. Also, it might not. Who knows? Subscribe to the channel. See you later.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.